Hi, seventh graders. It's Mrs. Larson here, and today we're talking about the Amigo brothers. It's a short story by Viri Thomas, and this is our next story, and we're discussing theme. So if you remember some of the things that we talked about the other day, let's give us a little bit of a review here, okay? So, let me go up here. There's a little bit of background information in regards to this story before we get started. And it's about two friends, or if you were to say amigos in Spanish, that live on the Lower East Side of New York City. And many of the boys from the Lower East Side have dreamed of building a better life by winning the New York Golden Globes, which is a boxing tournament that was started in 1927 by Paul Galleco. He was a newspaper writer. And this tournament marks like an amateur's entry into the world of like big time boxing. And so I decided to put a picture of probably one of the world's most famous boxers, and this is Muhammad Ali. And so you can see his belt there that he has won. So okay. Let's talk a little bit about the author. And I'm going to move myself up here a little bit, and then I'm going to exit stage left here in just a minute. But a little bit about the author. So Viri Thomas was born to Puerto Rican and Cuban parents in New York City's Spanish Harlem in about 1928. And unfortunately, poverty in the ghetto led him to getting into trouble with the law. And he served some time in prison. And there he began his life of rehabilitation, vowing to use his street and prison experience to turn youth away from lives of crime. And so he jumped into books, and writing became this tool for him to discover who he really was and to also portray his heritage. So Thomas then lectured. He lectured at schools and universities across the country and authored several books, including Down These Mean Streets, Savior, Savior, Hold My Hand, and Stories from El Barrio. He died in 2011 at the nice old age of 83. Okay. So to give us a little bit of a little bit better understanding of what Spanish Harlem kind of looks like and during that time. And so his writings are all set where he grew up, which is in New York City. And he writes about the neighborhoods that are heavily populated with Puerto Ricans and African Americans. And that's especially prevalent in the Spanish Harlem and the Lower East Side of Manhattan. So Thomas's writings really celebrate the strength and determination of people within his community. And so you can see this is a picture of Spanish Harlem in about the 1950s. And then I also kind of included a little map over here about the boroughs of New York City. And so you can kind of see where we're talking about, okay? And so we've got Brooklyn here, Queens, the Bronx, okay, Manhattan, and then Staten Island. It was interesting. I was reading something the other day, and there was a statistic that said there are like 5 states that could actually fit within this whole area where the population would be the same. So it's an extremely densely populated area. So just one thing to think about when we read the story, okay, and also kind of understand the setting. So our objective, I'm going to move myself down here, and I think I'm going to get rid of my picture because I've got a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about. I don't want this to be a distraction. So the objective for today is we will define theme and discuss how characters, conflict, and setting can help us determine the story's theme. Okay? So remember, if you're talking about theme, this is just kind of a review, every short story has a topic. And so that is 1 or 2 words that kind of sum up what the story is about. Whereas the theme is the author's message about that topic. So kind of like it's the text's message, not text message, but text message. So the theme, when you think about it, it's a lesson. It's a meaning, a moral, or message about life. It has to be a complete sentence, okay? So we use our in-life statement. Don't be cliche, such as, don't judge a book by its cover. It's usually implicit, meaning you need to infer and to figure it out. And it also gives real world advice. However, remember the theme will not reference the characters or plot of the story, yet it still needs to be universal. Okay, so let's begin to read Amigo Brothers. Now you can read along with me, which is great if you want to use the slides, or if you would like to read along with your textbook. Okay, we are on page 324, and I'm going to read along with the slides, but you can read along with the textbook as well. I always like to have the book in front of me. I don't know, there's just something about having a book in front of me that makes me feel like I'm reading. Okay, so let's get started. So The Amigo Brothers by Huey Thomas. Antonio Cruz and Felix Vargas were both 17 years old. They were so together in friendship that they felt themselves to be brothers. They had known each other ever since childhood, growing up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the same tenement building on the 5th Street between Avenue A and Avenue B. Antonio was fair, lean, and lanky, while Felix was dark, short, and husky. Antonio's hair was always falling over his eyes, while Felix wore his black hair in a natural afro style. Each youngster had a dream of someday becoming lightweight champion of the world. Every chance they had, the boys worked out, sometimes at the boys' club on 10th Street and Avenue A, and sometimes at the pros gym on 14th Street. Early morning sunrises would find them running along the East River Drive, wrapped in sweatshirts, short towels around their necks, and handkerchiefs Apache style around their foreheads. While some youngsters were into street negatives, Antonio and Felix slept, ate, rapped, and dreamt positive. Between them, they had a collection of fight magazines second to none, plus a scrapbook filled with torn tickets to every boxing match they had ever attended, and some clippings of their own. If asked a question about any given fighter, they would immediately zip out from their memory banks divisions, weights, records of fights, knockouts, technical knockouts, the draws, or losses. Each had fought many bouts representing their community and had won 2 gold-plated medals, plus a silver and bronze medallion. The difference was in their style. Antonio's lean form and long reach made him the better boxer, while Felix's short and muscular frame made him the better slugger. Whenever they had met in the ring for sparring sessions, it had always been hot and heavy. Now, after a series of elimination bouts, they had been informed that they were to meet each other in a division finals that were scheduled for the 7th of August, 2 weeks away. The winner to represent the boys' club in the Golden Gloves Championship tournament. The two boys continued to run together along the East River Drive. But even when joking with each other, they both sensed a wall rising between them. One morning, less than a week before their bout, they met as usual for their daily workout. They fooled around with a few jabs at the air, slapped skin, and then took off, running lightly along the dirty East River's edge. Antonio glanced at Felix, who kept his eyes purposely straight ahead, pausing from time to time to do some fancy leg work while throwing 1-2s followed by uppercuts to an imaginary jaw. Antonio then beat the air with a barrage of body blows and short, devastating lefts with a forehand, jaw-breaking right. After a mile or so, Felix puffed and said, "Let's stop for a while, bro. I think we both get something to say to each other." Antonio nodded. It was not natural to be acting as though nothing unusual was happening when 2 ace boon buddies were going to be blasting each other within a few short days. They rested their elbows on the railing, separating them from the river. Antonio wiped his face with his short towel. The sunrise was now creating day. Felix leaned heavily on the river's railing and stared across to the shores of Brooklyn. Finally, he broke the silence. "Man, I don't know how to come out with it." Antonio helped. "It's about our fight, right?" "Yeah, right." Felix's eyes squinted at the rising orange sun. "I've been thinking about it too, Benny. In fact, since we found out it was going to be you and me, I've been awake at night, pulling punches on you, trying not to hurt you." "Same here. It ain't natural to think about the fight. I mean, we are both Shirato fighters. We both want to win, but only one of us can win. There ain't no draws in the eliminations." Tony scratched his nose pensively. "Yeah, it would be better for our heads." He held out his hand, palm upward. "Deal?" "Deal." Felix lightly slapped open skin. "Ready for some more running?" Tony asked lamely. "Nah, bro, let's cut it here. You go on. I kind of like to get things together in my head." "You ain't worried, are you?" Tony asked. "No way, man." Felix laughed out loud. "I got too much smarts for that. I think it's cooler if we split right here. After the fight, we can get it together again like nothing ever happened." The Amigo brothers were not ashamed to hug each other tightly. "Guess you're right. Watch yourself, Felix. I hear there's some pretty heavy dudes up in the Bronx. Savako, okay? Okay, you watch yourself too, Sabe? Tony jogged away. Felix watched his friend disappear from view, throwing rights and lefts. Both fighters had a lot of psyching up to do before the big fight. The days in training passed much too slowly. Although they kept out of each other's way, they were aware of each other's progress via the ghetto grapevine. The evening before the big fight, Tony made his way to the roof of his tenement. In the quiet, early dark, he peered over the ledge. 6 stories below, the lights of the city blinked, and the sounds of cars mingled with the curses and the laughter of children in the street. He tried not to think of Felix, feelings he had succeeded in psyching his mind. But only in the ring would he really know. To spare Felix hurt, he would have to knock him out, early and quick. Up in the South Bronx, Felix decided to take in a movie in an effort to keep Antonio's face away from his fists. The flick was The Champion with Kirk Douglas, the third time Felix was seeing it. The champion was getting beat, his face being pounded into raw, wet hamburger. His eyes were cut, jagged, bleeding, one eye swollen, the other almost shut. He was saved only by the sound of the bell. Felix became the champ and Tony the challenger. The movie audience was going out of its head, roaring in bloodlust at the butchery going on. The champ hunched his shoulders, grunting and sniffing red blood back into his broken nose. The challenger, confident that he had the championship in the bag, threw a left. The champ countered with a dynamite right that exploded into the challenger's brains. Felix's right arm felt a shock. Antonio's face, superimposed on the screen, was shattered and split apart by the awesome force of the killer blow. Felix saw himself in the ring, blasting Antonio against the ropes. The champ had to be forcibly restrained. The challenger was allowed to crumble slowly to the canvas, a broken, bloody mess. When Felix finally left the theater, he had figured out how to psych himself for tomorrow's fight. It was Felix, the champion, versus Antonio, the challenger. He walked up some dark streets, deserted except for small pockets of wary-looking kids wearing gang colors. Despite the fact that he was Puerto Rican like them, they eyed him as a stranger to their turf. Felix did a last shuffle, bobbing and weaving, while letting loose a torrent of blows that would demolish whatever got in its way. It seemed to impress the brothers, who went about their own business. Finding no takers, Felix decided to split to his aunts. Walking the streets had not relaxed him. Neither had the fight flick. All it had done was stir him up. He let himself quietly into his Aunt Lucy's apartment and went straight to bed, falling into a fitful sleep with sounds of the gong for round 1. Antonio was passing some heavy time on his rooftop. How would the fight tomorrow affect his relationship with Felix? After all, fighting was like any other profession. Friendship had nothing to do with it. A gnawing doubt crept in. He cut negative thinking real quick by doing some speedy, fancy dance steps, bobbing and weaving like Mercury. The night air was blurred with perpetual motions of left hooks and right crosses. Felix, his amigo brother, was not going to be Felix at all in the ring, just an opponent with another face. Antonio went to sleep, hearing the opening bell for the first round. Like his friend in the South Bronx, he prayed for victory via a quick, clean knockout in the first round. Large posters plastered all over the walls of local shops announced the fight between Antonio Cruz and Felix Vargas as the main bout. The fight had created great interest in the neighborhood. Antonio and Felix were well liked and respected. Each had his own loyal following. Betting fever was high and ranged from a bottle of Coke to cold, hard cash on the line. Antonio's fans bet with unbridled faith in his boxing skills. On the other side, Felix admirers bet on his dynamic, packed fists. Felix had returned to his apartment early in the morning of August 7th and stayed there, hoping to avoid seeing Antonio. He turned the radio on to salsa music sounds, and then tried to read while waiting for word from his manager. The fight was scheduled to take place in Thompson Square Park. It had been decided that the gymnasium of the boys' club was not large enough to hold all the people who were sure to attend. In Thompson Square Park, everyone who wanted could view the fight, whether from ringside or window fire escapes or tenement rooftops. The morning of the fight, Thompson Square was a beehive of activity, with numerous workers setting up the ring, the seats, and the guest speaker stand. The scheduled bouts began shortly after noon, and the park had begun filling up even earlier. The local junior high school across from Thompson Square served as the dressing room for all the fighters. Each was given a separate classroom with desktops covered with mats, serving as resting tables. Antonio thought he caught a glimpse of Felix waving to him from a room at the far end of the corridor. He waved back, just in case it had been him. The fighters changed from their street clothes into fighting gear. Antonio wore white trunks, black socks, and black shoes, while Felix wore sky blue trunks, red socks, and white boxing shoes. Each had dressing gowns to match their fighting trunks with their names neatly stitched on the back. The loudspeakers blared into the open window of the school. There were speeches by dignitaries, community leaders, and great boxers of yesteryear. Some were well prepared, some improvised on the spot. They all carried the same message of great pleasure and honor at being part of such a historic event. This great day was in the tradition of champions emerging from the streets of the Lower East Side. Interwoven with the speeches were the sounds of the other boxing events after the sixth bout. Felix was much relieved when his trainer Charlie said, "Time change, quick knockout, this is it, we're on." Waiting time was over. Felix was escorted from the classroom by a dozen fans in white t-shirts with the word Felix across their fronts. Antonio was escorted down a different stairwell and guided through a roped-off path. As the two climbed into the ring, the crowd exploded with a roar. Antonio and Felix both bowed gracefully and then raised their arms in acknowledgement. Antonio tried to be cool, even as the roar was in its first birth. He turned slowly to meet Felix's eyes, looking directly into his. Felix nodded his head, and Antonio responded. And both, as one, just as quickly, turned away to face his own corner. Bong, bong, bong. The roar turned to stillness. "Ladies and gentlemen, señoras y señoras," the announcer spoke slowly, pleased by his bilingual efforts. "Now the moment we have been waiting for, the main event between two fine young Puerto Rican fighters, products of our Lower East Side." "Luisada," called out a member of the audience. "In this corner, weighing 131 pounds, Felix Vargas. And in this corner, weighing 133 pounds, Antonio Cruz. The winner will represent the boys' club in the Tournament of Champions, the Golden Gloves. There will be no draw. May the best man win." The cheering of the crowd shook the window panes of the old buildings surrounding Tompkins Square. At the center of the ring, the referee was giving instructions to the youngsters. "Keep your punches up. No low blows. No punching on the back of the head. Keep your heads up. Understand? Let's have a clean fight. Now shake hands and come out fighting." Both youngsters touched gloves and nodded. They turned and danced quickly to their corners. Their head towels and dressing gowns were lifted neatly from their shoulders by their trainer's nimble fingers. Antonio crossed himself. Felix did the same. Bong, bong. Round one. Felix and Antonio turned and faced each other squarely in a fighting pose. Felix wasted no time. He came in fast, head low, half hunched towards his right shoulder, and lashed out with a straight left. He missed a right cross as Antonio slipped the punch and countered with a 1, 2, 3 lefts that snapped Felix's head back, sending a mild shock coursing through him. If Felix had any small doubt about their friendship affecting their fight, it was being neatly dispelled. Antonio danced, a joy to behold. His left hand was like a piston, pumping jabs one right after another with seeming ease. Felix bobbed and weaved and never stopped boring in. He knew that at long range, he was at a disadvantage. Antonio had too much reach on him. Only by coming in close could Felix hope to achieve the dream of knockout. Antonio knew the dynamite that was stored in his Amigo brother's fists. He ducked a short right and missed a left hook. Felix trapped him against the ropes just long enough to pour some punishing rights and lefts to Antonio's hard midsection. Antonio slipped away from Felix, crashing 2 lefts to his head, which set Felix's right ear to ringing. Bong! Both amigos froze a punch well on its way, sending up a roar of approval for good sportsmanship. Felix walked briskly back to his corner. His right ear had not stopped ringing. Antonio gracefully danced his way towards his stool, none the worse, except for the glowing glove burns, showing angry red against the whiteness of his midribs. "Watch that right, Tony," his trainer talked into his ear. "Remember, Felix always goes to the body. He'll want you to drop your hands, for his overhand left or right. Got it? Antonio nodded, spraying water out between his teeth. He felt better as his sore midsection was being firmly rubbed. Felix's corner was also busy. You gotta get in there, Phil. Phoenix trainer poured water over his curly afro locks. Get in there or he's gonna chop you up from one way back. Bong, bong. Round 2. Felix was off his stool and rushed Antonio like a bull, sending a hard right to his head. Beads of water exploded from Antonio's long hair. Antonio hurt, sent back a blurring barrage of lefts and rights that only meant pain to Felix, who returned with a short left to the head, followed by a looping right to the body. Antonio countered with his own flurry, forcing Felix to give ground, but not for long. Felix bobbed and weaved and bobbed, occasionally punching his two gloves together. Antonio waited for the rush that was sure to come. Felix closed in and feinted with his left shoulder and threw his right instead. Lights suddenly exploded inside Felix's head as Antonio slipped the blow and hit him with a piston-like left, catching him flush on the point of his chin. Bedlam broke loose as Felix's legs momentarily buckled. He fought off a series of rights and lefts and came back with a strong right that taught Antonio's respect. Antonio danced in carefully. He knew Felix had the habit of playing possum when hurt, to succor an opponent within reach of the powerful bombs he carried in each fist. A right to the head slowed Antonio's pretty dancing. He answered his own left at Felix's right eye that began puffing up within 3 seconds. Antonio, a bit too eager, moved in too close, and Felix had him entangled in a rip-roaring, punching toe-to-toe slugfest that brought the whole Tompkins Square Park screaming to its feet. Rights to the body, lefts to the head, neither fighter was giving an inch. Suddenly, a short right caught Antonio squarely on the chin. His long legs turned to jelly and his arms flailed out desperately. Felix, grunting like a bull, threw wild punches from every direction. Antonio, groggy, bobbed and weaved, evading most of the blows. Suddenly, his head clear. His left flashed out hard and straight, catching Felix on the bridge of his nose. Felix lashed back with a haymaker right off the ghetto streets. At the same instant, his eyes caught another left hook from Antonio. Felix swung out, trying to clear the pain. Only the frenzied screaming of those along ringside let him know that he had dropped Antonio. Fighting off the growing haze, Antonio struggled to his feet. He got up, ducked, and threw a smashing right that dropped Felix flat on his back. Felix got up as fast as he could in his own corner, groggy, but still game. He didn't even hear the count. In a fog, he heard the roaring of the crowd, who seemed to have gone insane. His head cleared to hear the bell sound at the end of the round. He was very glad. His trainer sat him down on the stool. In his corner, Antonio was doing what all fighters do when they are hurt. They sit and smile at everyone. The referee signaled the ring doctor to check the fighters out. He did so and then gave his okay. The cold water sponges brought clarity to both Amigo brothers. They were rubbed until their circulation ran free. Bong! Round 3, the final round. Up to now, it had been tic-tac-toe, pretty much even. But everyone knew there could be no draw, and that is this round would decide the winner. This time, to Felix's surprise, it was Antonio who came out fast, charging across the ring. Felix braced himself but couldn't ward off the barrage of punches. Antonio drove Felix hard against the ropes. The crowd ate it up. Thus far, the two had fought with mucho corazo. Felix tapped his glove and commenced his tack anew. Antonio, throwing boxer's caution to the wind, jumped in to meet him. Both pounded away. Neither gave an inch, and neither fell to the canvas. Felix's left eye was tightly closed. Claret red blood poured from Antonio's nose. They fought, toe to toe. The sounds of their blows were loud in contrast to the silence of the crowd gone completely mute. The referee was stunned by their savagery. Bong, bong, bong. The bell sounded over and over again. Felix and Antonio were past hearing. Their blows continued to pound on each other like hailstones. Finally, the referee and the two trainers pried Felix and Antonio apart. Cold water was poured over them to bring them back to their senses. They looked around and then rushed towards each other. A cry of alarm surged through Thompson Square Park. Was this a fight to the death instead of a boxing match? The fear soon gave way to a wave upon wave of cheering as the two amigos embraced. No matter what the decision, they knew they had always be champions to each other. Bong, bong, bong. Ladies and gentlemen, Sonoras and Sonoras, the winner and representative of the Golden Gloves Tournament of Champions is... The announcer turned to point to the winner and found himself alone. Arm in arm, the champions had already left the ring. That is the end of the Amigo brothers.